It's easy to think of neighbors as the people you wave to on a Sunday morning. The ones who lend you sugar, who keep an eye on your place when you're away. But sometimes, the person living just a few feet away isn't who you think they are. It starts small, a strange look through the blinds, a porch light that flickers at odd hours. Then you notice other things, a dog that never stops barking until it goes silent, a figure standing at their window at 3 a.m., just staring, footsteps pacing above your ceiling even though they live next door. And sometimes, those little warning signs are only the beginning. Because once you realize the real danger is coming from right across the fence, it's usually too late. Would you still feel safe in your own home if you knew the worst thing out there wasn't in the woods, but right next door? I moved into the duplex 2 years ago. It was cheap, a little worn down, but the neighborhood felt quiet. On the first night, I noticed the man in the other half of the duplex. He was older, maybe in his late 50s, tall and thin with a gray hoodie. He stood at his upstairs window, just looking out at the street. I thought nothing of it. Lots of people watch, right? At first, he was just an odd neighbor. He barely nodded if I said hello. Sometimes I'd catch him at that window in the middle of the night. The blinds parted just enough for his face to peek through. I figured maybe he had insomnia, but then little things started happening. One morning I found my trash can tipped over. The lid is missing completely. Another time, I came home to find my welcome mat soaked. Not from rain, but like someone had dumped a bucket of water on it. I shrugged it off at first. Maybe it was kids in the neighborhood. One night in early autumn, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. My bedroom window faced the street, and the glow of a streetlight made it easy to see out. That's when I noticed him again, standing in his window, but this time, his head was turned. Not toward the street, toward me. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe he was just zoning out. But the next night, when I closed my curtains, I swear I saw the blinds on his side twitch, like someone pulling them back an inch to peek. A week later, things escalated. I was leaving for work early, before sunrise. When I stepped outside, I noticed something dark smeared across the steps of my porch. It looked like mud at first, but the smell hit me. It was raw meat, chunks of it, scattered like someone had thrown them there. I finally called the landlord. He promised to talk to the guy, but nothing changed. In fact, the next few nights felt worse. I started hearing faint knocking on my wall, the one that separated my bedroom from his. It always happened between 2 and 3 in the morning. 3 slow knocks. Pause. 3 more. The breaking point came one Saturday night. I was lying in bed scrolling on my phone when I heard it. A soft scraping sound coming from the window. When I turned to look, I saw a shape. A long, pale hand reaching between the gap of my curtains. I jumped up so fast I nearly dropped my phone. By the time I yanked the curtains open, the window was empty. But across the street, I could see him, framed in his window again, smiling. I called the police that night. They showed up, knocked on his door, but came back saying he seemed confused and told them I was imagining things. The officers said they couldn't do much without real evidence. I started sleeping with a baseball bat by my bed. I kept my curtains drawn tight, but I swear I could feel his eyes on me. A few days later, I noticed something new. A ladder leaning against the side of my duplex. I hadn't put it there. It was angled just beneath my bedroom window. That night, I barely slept. Around 3:15 a.m., I heard my bedroom doorknob jiggle. just a tiny, almost imperceptible shake. I froze. Then it stopped. And a moment later, there were 3 slow knocks, coming from my wall again. The next morning, I packed a bag and stayed with a friend for a week. When I came back, the ladder was gone. So was the man. His half of the duplex was empty, curtains drawn, no sign of him. The landlord said he'd moved out suddenly. No forwarding address, no explanation. Sometimes late at night, I still wake up thinking I hear the knocks. I tell myself it's just in my head, but I keep my baseball bat by the bed anyway. I'd been saving for years to finally buy my first home. It wasn't much, just a small 1-story house at the edge of town with a neat little backyard. When I moved in, I felt like I'd finally made it. The neighborhood seemed friendly, quiet, except for the house directly behind mine. Its tall, weathered wooden fence loomed over my back fence. I couldn't see the yard, just the top of an overgrown oak tree and a cracked second-floor window. I first met the man behind the fence on my second day there. I was hauling boxes from my car when I heard a low voice call out, "Are you the new one moving in?" I turned to see a man leaning against the fence, peering over just enough to show his eyes and forehead. He looked to be in his mid-40s with a rough, almost gaunt face. His eyes lingered a little too long. I introduced myself, trying to be polite. He only nodded and said, "Yard's quiet at night. Keep it that way." Then he disappeared behind the fence. I brushed it off as just an awkward greeting. But that first night, when I stepped outside to take the trash, I thought I heard soft footsteps in the yard behind mine. And then a whisper, too faint to make out the words. For the next few weeks, things were uneventful. But little by little, I started noticing strange things in my backyard. A broken garden gnome appeared on my porch one morning. A few nights later, I found my back gate unlocked. I always kept it latched. Another morning, there were small piles of gravel scattered in the grass. It felt like someone was trying to get my attention, or test me. Then came the notes. The first one slipped between the slats of my back fence. It was scribbled on lined notebook paper, just 5 words. "Stay out after dark. D." No explanation, no context, just that single warning. I assumed it was some kind of prank. A week later, another note appeared. This one said, "You don't know what I hear." The writing was jagged, almost frantic. By then, I started to feel genuinely uneasy. I debated calling the police, but decided to wait. It wasn't exactly a threat, yet. One night in late October, I was raking leaves after dark when I heard it. A soft, deliberate tapping against the wooden fence. Not random, it was rhythmic. I froze and listened. Tap, 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 then silence. I stepped closer, peering through the gaps between the boards. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw a pale hand withdraw into the darkness on the other side. I went inside, locked my doors, and kept the lights on. At around 1:15 a.m., I woke to the sound of my motion sensor light clicking on in the backyard. I crept to the window and slowly peeked out. The yard was empty, but the light illuminated something I hadn't noticed before. Near the fence, on my side of the yard, stood a garden stake. A crude little cross made from 2 nailed-together sticks. It hadn't been there earlier. The next morning, I called the police. An officer came by, took a report, and spoke to the man behind the fence. When he returned, he shrugged and said, "The neighbor says he doesn't know anything. We'll keep an eye out." That night, a third note appeared. It read, They never believe until it's too late. I decided to install a cheap outdoor camera aimed at the fence. For a couple of nights, nothing happened. Then, around 3 a.m. on the third night, I got a motion alert. I opened the feed on my phone, heart pounding. At first, the image was just darkness, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw him. The man behind the fence, standing perfectly still. Only his face visible between the slats, eyes fixed on the camera. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, watching. I called the police again that night. By the time they arrived, he was gone. The officer suggested maybe it was a misunderstanding, but I knew better. From then on, I barely slept. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside felt like him, waiting just beyond the fence. A month later, just as winter set in, the man disappeared. His house went dark. A for sale sign appeared in the front yard. I thought it was over. Relieved, I finally started to sleep through the night again. But even now, sometimes when I'm outside late, I swear I feel eyes on me. As if, somewhere beyond another fence, he's still watching. When my husband and I first rented the townhouse, we felt lucky. It was in a quiet little cul-de-sac, affordable, freshly painted, with a small shared courtyard. We liked that the walls were thick. We barely heard the neighbors, at least at first. The man next door kept to himself. We'd occasionally see him bringing in groceries at night, always wearing the same dark jacket and cap. He never said more than a curt hello. We didn't even know his name. The only odd thing we noticed was his basement door. It was an exterior entrance around the side of his unit, and it was always padlocked. Heavy steel with a second latch bolted into the frame. The first time we heard the noises was in late winter. A low, rhythmic thumping, like something heavy being shifted around. It came from behind our living room wall, the one that adjoined his basement. At first, we assumed it was just him doing late-night repairs. But the sound came again the next night, and the next, always after 2 a.m. We tried to ignore it until one night when the sound changed. It wasn't just thudding anymore, it was a scraping, dragging noise. Then, unmistakably, a muffled voice. Too soft to catch the words, but definitely a voice. We sat frozen on the couch, TV muted, staring at the wall like we could somehow see through it. The next morning, I noticed something odd by the basement door. Fresh scuff marks on the concrete, as though something heavy had been dragged down the steps. I told my husband, but he brushed it off, said maybe the neighbor was moving furniture. But that night, the dragging sound came again. And this time, after it stopped, we heard what sounded like a single, hollow knock from the other side of the wall. I considered calling the police, but hesitated. We didn't know what was going on. Maybe it really was nothing. So instead, I decided to casually ask him the next day. I caught him coming out to get his mail. He stiffened when I mentioned the noises. His only response was a short, flat, "Basement's none of your business." Then he turned and went back inside. That night, the noises were worse. A loud metallic clang followed by a dragging sound that lasted almost a full minute. Then silence. I barely slept. In the morning, I noticed something new. The padlock on his basement door was gone, and the door itself was slightly ajar, just an inch or two. Darkness pooled in the gap. I told my husband. He thought maybe the wind had blown it open. He pushed it shut, but didn't try to lock it. We left for work as usual. That evening, when we returned, the door was open again, wider this time, and there were faint, wet marks on the concrete steps, like something had been dragged down into the basement. We decided to call the police that night. 2 officers came, checked the basement, and came back out saying it was empty. The neighbor claimed he was remodeling and had left the door open by mistake. The officers told us to call again if we heard anything else. For the next 3 nights, the noises stopped. We started to believe maybe it really was nothing. Then came the storm. Late on a Friday, a cold rain pounded the courtyard. The wind howled between the townhouses. Around midnight, I went downstairs to check the windows. That's when I heard it. Not the dragging this time, but a thin, wavering sob coming from the basement door outside. I woke my husband. We stood by the back window, listening. The sobbing stopped. A moment later, we heard the slow creak of the basement door closing by itself. That was enough. We called the police again. When they arrived, they went down into the basement. We waited by the window, hearts pounding. When they came back up, they didn't say what they'd found. They just escorted our neighbor out in handcuffs. We later learned he was wanted for an assault charge in another state. The basement was nearly empty except for a cot, a rope tied to a support beam, and several heavy trash bags. No one told us what was in them. The police wouldn't say. They only told us we'd done the right thing by calling when we did. We've since moved out of that townhouse. But every time it rains at night, I find myself thinking about that sob in the storm and the way the basement door creaked shut on its own. The thing about neighbors is, you never really know them. You share walls, fences, even the same parking lot. But what goes on just a few feet away can be far darker than you'd ever imagine. All 3 stories tonight started with something small. A glance from a window, a noise through the wall, a door that wouldn't stay shut. Tiny details you'd normally ignore until it's too late. Which of these neighbors unsettled you the most? I read every comment, sometimes late at night when the house is quiet. If tonight's stories kept you awake, you should hear the ones I couldn't include here. Check out the other creepy files, but maybe leave a light on.